Tutankhamun's mask is an icon, and I think part of it is because it is made of solid gold, and a lot of people get wowed by that, as well as by the beauty of the craftsmanship and also by the elegance and the expression of the face.
For more than a century, the golden funerary mask of Tutankhamun has been treated as one of the most secure facts in archaeology. It is displayed as the definitive image of the boy king, the face that represents ancient Egypt in textbooks, museums, and documentaries around the world. But a new round of high-resolution quantum imaging scans has raised a serious question. The mask may not have been made for Tutankhamun at all.
Tutankhamun's mummy was absolutely covered in jewelry, collars, amulets, but also 2 daggers. And one of those daggers had an iron blade.
Unlike traditional X-rays, quantum-based material imaging can detect microscopic structural disturbances inside metal, patterns left behind when gold is reheated, hammered, plugged, or reworked. When physicists applied this technology to the mask, they were not looking for controversy. The stated goal was to test the equipment on ancient gold artifacts. What they found instead was evidence of alteration beneath the surface. In the oval cartouche that bears Tutankhamun's royal name,
layers and layers and layers of information are coming out, not just because objects are being examined in detail, but also because new technologies can be applied to them.
The scan detected irregular atomic displacement patterns not present anywhere else on the mask. The data suggests that the gold in this specific area was flattened and re-engraved. In addition, the pierced ears, long considered an odd detail for an adult male pharaoh, appear to have been filled with cylindrical gold plugs made from the same alloy as the surrounding metal, then polished until invisible to earlier scanning methods. Perhaps most significant was a thermal signature along the seam where the face meets the headdress. The atomic structure in that region shows signs of localized reheating at a temperature different from the rest of the mask, consistent with reattachment from behind rather than original casting. If these readings are confirmed, they point to a direct conclusion. The mask was modified after its initial creation. That leads to a larger historical question. If it was altered for Tutankhamun, then who was it originally made for? For decades, some Egyptologists have speculated that the mask may have belonged to Nefertiti, the powerful queen who disappeared from the historical record after the reign of Akhenaten. The new imaging data does not settle the debate, but it brings it back to the forefront with measurable physical evidence. For 3,300 years, the mask has been assumed to represent one individual. The new scans suggest it may represent 2, a vanished queen beneath the face of a boy king. Before drawing conclusions, however, it is necessary to revisit how this mask was discovered, how it was studied, and why earlier examinations failed to detect what modern technology now claims to see. In November 1922, British archaeologist Howard Carter made the discovery that would define modern Egyptology. Working in the Valley of the Kings under the patronage of Lord Carnarvon, Carter uncovered a sealed doorway bearing royal cartouches. When he finally peered inside the chamber by candlelight, he reportedly described seeing wonderful things. What followed was the first largely intact royal burial ever documented from ancient Egypt. At the center of that burial was the tomb of Tutankhamun, a relatively minor ruler of the 18th dynasty who had died around age 19. Unlike other pharaohs whose tombs had been looted in antiquity, Tutankhamun's burial chamber contained thousands of objects left undisturbed for over 3 millennia. Chariots, statues, furniture, jewelry, and ritual items were packed tightly into the small chambers, creating an unprecedented archaeological time capsule. The mask itself was found nested within 3 coffins, the innermost made of solid gold. Weighing approximately 22 pounds, the funerary mask was crafted from high-purity gold and inlaid with lapis lazuli, quartz, obsidian, and colored glass. Its craftsmanship was extraordinary, combining technical precision with idealized royal imagery that projected divine authority. For the ancient Egyptians, gold symbolized the flesh of the gods, and such a mask was not decorative but functional within religious belief. From the moment it was revealed to the public, the mask became the defining image of ancient Egypt. It appeared in newspapers across the world and later in museums, documentaries, and textbooks. For generations, it was accepted without serious challenge as the personal funerary mask made specifically for Tutankhamun. That assumption shaped scholarship for a century. The mask was studied, photographed, and chemically analyzed, but always within the framework that it unquestionably belonged to the boy king. Only later would researchers begin to re-examine that certainty and ask whether the object's history might be more complicated than originally believed. Ancient Egyptian law dictated that a pharaoh's burial had to be completed within a strict 70-day period following death. This rule was not flexible. Missing the deadline was considered a religious catastrophe because it could prevent the king's soul from safely entering the afterlife. In Tutankhamun's case, his sudden death created an almost impossible logistical challenge. Tombs had to be carved from solid limestone, coffins meticulously constructed, and thousands of burial objects prepared and arranged, all under intense time pressure. Crafting a funerary mask weighing over 22 pounds, inlaid with precious stones and inscribed with hieroglyphs, was among the most demanding tasks, yet it was expected to be completed alongside all other preparations. Evidence from the tomb itself suggests that the process was rushed. Tutankhamun's burial chamber is unusually small compared to those of other pharaohs, forcing workers to cram large items, such as the massive sarcophagus, into tight spaces. Many of the wall paintings appear incomplete, as though artisans abandoned their brushes in haste. Even some coffins and statues in the tomb do not match Tutankhamun's likeness, and inscriptions on several objects appear to have been scraped and recarved. These inconsistencies indicate that the burial was executed under extreme pressure, leaving room for shortcuts or repurposing of existing items. The mask, as the centerpiece of the burial, would have presented a particular challenge. Creating such a detailed and technically complex object from scratch in 70 days would have been extraordinary even under ideal conditions. This raises the question of whether the craftsmen had sufficient time to produce it specifically for Tutankhamun, or whether they relied on pre-existing materials to meet the deadline. The evidence points to a burial carried out with urgency and improvisation, hinting that not everything in the tomb may have been originally intended for the young pharaoh. These circumstances create the first cracks in the long-standing narrative of Tutankhamun's funerary mask. While the mask was treated as a flawless and permanent artifact for decades, the compressed timeline and physical inconsistencies in the tomb now invite deeper scrutiny. If time constraints forced improvisation, the possibility emerges that the mask, and potentially other items, may have been adapted from earlier burials, challenging the assumption that they were created exclusively for Tutankhamun. Even before advanced imaging technologies became available, careful observers had noticed irregularities in Tutankhamun's mask and tomb that didn't align with traditional expectations. One of the most striking details is the pierced ears of the mask. In ancient Egyptian iconography, only women and children were depicted with earrings, while adult male pharaohs never wore them on sacred funerary objects. Yet Tutankhamun's mask displays ears clearly prepared for earrings, a feature that would have been highly unusual, if not outright forbidden, for a male king. Other subtle inconsistencies further fuel questions about the mask's origin. The facial features appear unusually delicate, almost feminine, contrasting with the more angular and masculine depictions typically used for adult male pharaohs. The gold on the face exhibits a faint reddish tint, slightly different from the rest of the headdress, suggesting either a different source of metal or later modification. Even within the tomb, many statues, jewelry pieces, and coffins do not correspond to Tutankhamun's known likeness or body proportions. Some items show signs of hurried alteration, such as names being scraped off and replaced, and decorative elements that seem repurposed from other burials. These anomalies, though visible, were largely dismissed by scholars for decades. The conventional assumption was that the mask and associated artifacts had been crafted specifically for Tutankhamun, and any minor irregularities were attributed to rushed work or stylistic variation. In other words, the clues were in front of everyone, but the broader narrative, that this was the boy king's perfect burial ensemble, was too ingrained to be seriously questioned. Looking back, these early observations now take on new significance. The pierced ears, delicate features, and mismatched gold are not isolated oddities but potential indicators that the mask may not have originally been made for Tutankhamun. Combined with the rushed burial timeline, these subtle details suggest a scenario in which ancient craftsmen had to improvise, adapting pre-existing materials under immense pressure. In this context, the anomalies become pieces of a larger puzzle pointing to a more complex and possibly controversial history behind the world's most famous funerary mask. Central to the mystery is Nefertiti, one of ancient Egypt's most enigmatic figures. She was the wife of Akhenaten and stepmother to Tutankhamun, and for a time she may have even ruled Egypt herself under a throne name historians call Neferuaten. Her reign was unprecedented. She may have stepped into a position of absolute authority after Akhenaten's death, yet her name and tomb vanished from the historical record, leaving no confirmed burial site or mummy. Scholars have debated her disappearance for decades, and the lack of direct evidence has only fueled speculation. Many Egyptologists have long suspected that Nefertiti's influence continued well beyond her husband's reign, possibly overlapping with Tutankhamun's brief rule. The physical clues on Tutankhamun's mask, the pierced ears, delicate features, and the reddish tint in the gold, correspond to traits associated with Nefertiti rather than the boy king. If the mask had originally belonged to the queen, the anomalies in its design suddenly make sense. They could represent subtle attempts to adapt a female mask for a male pharaoh under extreme time pressure. For decades, this theory remained speculative because proving it would require invasive analysis. Damaging the mask to inspect its interior or metal layers was strictly forbidden. As a result, Nefertiti's connection to Tutankhamun's mask existed mostly in whispers at academic conferences and in scholarly footnotes. The theory challenged deeply held assumptions about Egyptian burial practices, royal succession, and the sanctity of funerary objects, making it controversial and difficult to explore without definitive evidence. Now, with modern scanning technologies capable of revealing atomic-level modifications, these long-standing suspicions are being revisited. The previously hidden possibility that Tutankhamun's iconic mask was repurposed from Nefertiti's burial not only reframes our understanding of one of history's most famous pharaohs, but also raises new questions about the disappearance of the queen herself. What other artifacts might have been adapted or reused, and how much of the historical narrative surrounding Egypt's royal family may be based on layers of unseen modification and concealment? In 2014, a routine maintenance incident at the Egyptian Museum unexpectedly thrust Tutankhamun's mask back into the spotlight. During a cleaning procedure, a worker accidentally snapped off the long braided beard, a sacred symbol of kingship, leaving a visible break on the iconic mask. What followed was a mismanaged attempt at repair that almost compounded the damage. Museum staff, lacking proper conservation materials, applied industrial-strength epoxy in a crude attempt to reattach the beard, leaving noticeable smears on the golden chin and raising alarms among experts and the public alike. The Egyptian government quickly called in an international team led by German conservator Christian Ekman to properly restore the mask. Before proceeding with the repair, Ekman's team conducted a detailed examination using X-ray fluorescence (XRF) technology, aiming to detect any underlying alterations in the metal. The scans showed uniform density throughout the mask, intact glass inlays, and no visible solder lines. The inscriptions spelling Tutankhamun's name appeared original, without evidence of prior erasure or modification. For the team, the mask seemed unquestionably authentic, consistent with centuries of scholarship. These results were widely publicized, and the Nefertiti theory was dismissed by many as speculative and unprovable. Conventional X-ray imaging had its limits, and at the time, there was no non-invasive method sensitive enough to detect atomic-scale modifications or thermal histories within the gold. The official conclusion reaffirmed that Tutankhamun's mask was entirely his, and the story of Nefertiti's possible connection faded back into academic whispers. Yet despite these reassuring scans, a small but persistent group of scientists remained unconvinced. They argued that XRF and similar methods could not reveal the subtle traces of superheated gold, hammered modifications, or perfectly hidden plugs. According to them, if the ancient craftsmen had reused metal from the same batch and expertly disguised seams, no conventional technology would have detected it. The 2014 accident paradoxically created both a crisis and an opportunity. While the mask's break exposed it to potential damage, it also laid the groundwork for a new generation of analysis that would eventually challenge centuries of assumptions. While X-ray fluorescence, XRF, scans provided valuable insights during the 2014 restoration, they were inherently limited in what they could reveal about Tutankhamun's mask. X-rays are designed to detect differences in density, revealing cracks, voids, or solder joints. They cannot, however, identify subtle alterations at the atomic level, nor can they distinguish between gold that was poured once and gold that was later reheated, hammered, or reworked. If a seam was painstakingly concealed, or the same batch of gold was used to plug holes, X-rays would show nothing unusual. In other words, conventional imaging could only see what was physically obvious, leaving potential modifications invisible for decades. This limitation was critical because the anomalies observed in the mask, pierced ears, delicate facial features, slight differences in gold coloration, might all have been the result of sophisticated alterations designed to pass unnoticed. The ancient craftsmen were capable of advanced metalworking techniques, including resoldering, rehammering, and smoothing surfaces to an almost flawless degree. They could have effectively erased physical traces of their work in ways that older technologies could not detect. The challenge then was to develop a method capable of detecting the memory of the metal itself. Gold, like other metals, retains microscopic evidence of how it has been manipulated, whether it was hammered, heated to a particular temperature, or joined from multiple pieces. To read these subtle signatures required a technology that went beyond traditional density-based imaging. Researchers needed a tool sensitive enough to detect atomic displacements and thermal history without physically altering the artifact, a requirement that had until recently existed only in highly specialized laboratories. This gap in technology explains why for decades the mask was universally accepted as Tutankhamun's, despite physical inconsistencies. The evidence of potential repurposing was literally invisible until the development of quantum resonance imaging, a technique capable of mapping structural anomalies at the atomic level. Without this advancement, the question of whether Tutankhamun's mask had been modified or had originally belonged to someone else remained firmly in the realm of speculation. In late 2024, a team led by Dr. Helena Voss at the Max Planck Institute gained unprecedented access to scan Tutankhamun's funerary mask using quantum resonance imaging, a technology capable of detecting atomic-level changes in metals. Unlike conventional X-rays, which show density and obvious cracks, this method can identify subtle structural disruptions left by hammering, reheating, or reworking. Essentially, it can read the memory of the metal itself, evidence that had remained invisible for decades. The mask, scanned after the Grand Egyptian Museum closed, was initially expected to confirm earlier findings, but the results surprised even the most seasoned scientists. The scan focused on the oval cartouche that bore Tutankhamun's name. Beneath the surface, the team detected minute patterns of atomic displacement, revealing that the gold had been hammered and reworked in ways inconsistent with a mask created from scratch for the Boy King. The pierced ears, previously considered an anomaly, were discovered to contain cylindrical gold plugs, chemically identical to the surrounding metal, filling holes that had originally held earrings. Additionally, the thermal signature along the seam where the face meets the headdress showed evidence of localized superheating, suggesting the face had been attached from behind rather than cast as a single piece. These findings indicated deliberate, expert modification rather than natural damage or accident. For the first time, scientists had non-invasive proof that the mask had been altered. While the alterations were invisible to conventional X-rays, quantum imaging revealed every hidden detail, including evidence of prior inscriptions beneath Tutankhamun's name. The technology provided a new lens through which to examine the mask, opening the possibility that it was repurposed from an earlier burial. These results would reignite debates over one of Egyptology's most famous and enduring mysteries. Central to the mystery is Nefertiti, the enigmatic wife of Akhenaten and stepmother to Tutankhamun. After Akhenaten's death, Nefertiti may have ruled Egypt under a throne name, yet her final fate remains unknown. No confirmed tomb or mummy has been found, and her disappearance has sparked centuries of speculation. Scholars have debated whether she died before Tutankhamun or whether political shifts erased her presence from the historical record. The anomalies on Tutankhamun's mask now take on new significance in this context. The delicate facial features, feminine proportions, reddish tint of the gold, and pierced ears align more closely with Nefertiti than with a teenage boy king. Historical records indicate that Tutankhamun's sudden death left priests with only 70 days to complete the burial, forcing them to improvise. If Nefertiti's mask existed in a prepared tomb, it could have been repurposed, modified to appear masculine, and engraved with Tutankhamun's name over her original inscriptions. For decades, this theory remained speculative. Physical examination of the mask was prohibited due to its sacred and fragile nature, and earlier imaging methods lacked the precision to confirm the hypothesis. The 2024 quantum scans, however, provide direct evidence of modifications consistent with repurposing. This links Nefertiti to the mask in a tangible, measurable way, suggesting her influence extended beyond her disappearance, and that Tutankhamun's iconic face may, in fact, conceal the legacy of a vanished queen whose story has been hidden for over 3 millennia. The possibility that Tutankhamun's mask originally belonged to Nefertiti has major implications for Egyptology. If repurposed, it raises questions about other tomb treasures, how many were adapted from earlier burials, and how much was modified to fit Tutankhamun. The precision of these alterations highlights the skill of ancient craftsmen. Nefertiti's fate remains a mystery. Her original mask and tomb are still unknown, and political or dynastic motives may explain the reuse. Millions see the mask unaware that beneath the gold lies her legacy, preserved at the atomic level and hidden for 3,300 years.